the Israeli leadership is very much on edge about the prospect of arrest warrants, with Netanyahu apparently engaged in a non-stop push over the telephone to prevent an arrest warrant from being issued. Now, Palestine accepted the ICC's jurisdiction in 2015, and the court decided that Palestine was a state for the purposes of its ratifying statute in 2021. From what we know, it looks like these arrest warrants are likely to be against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and IDF Chief Herzi Halevi. And I also believe that Netanyahu has immunity, and coupled with the fact that the ICC jurisdiction has not been accepted by Israel, he should not be arrested. Reports indicate that the International Criminal Court may be issuing arrest warrants against Israeli and Hamas leaders by the end of the week. While we don't have any information from the court yet, the Israeli leadership is very much on edge about the prospect of arrest warrants, with Netanyahu apparently engaged in a non-stop push over the telephone to prevent an arrest warrant from being issued, which indicates that these reports may be true. They may have already been communicated to Israel by the ICC privately before going public, or, as has often been alleged, there may also be spies within the court which may have leaked this information. Just to explain for background, the International Criminal Court was set up around 2 decades ago to try individuals for international crimes, and is very different from the International Court of Justice, which determines state responsibility for violations of international law. While the ICC tries individuals only, the ICJ only hears cases as they relate to states. And so the cases of crimes committed by individual perpetrators in Palestine will be handled by the ICC, and South Africa's case, for instance, against Israel for the commission of crimes of the crime of genocide will be heard by the ICJ. Now, Palestine accepted the ICC's jurisdiction in 2015, and the court decided that Palestine was a state for the purposes of its ratifying statute in 2021. And so the investigation has been underway since then, but it has really ramped up since October 7th. From what we know, it looks like these arrest warrants are likely to be against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and IDF Chief Herzi Halevi, as well as against Hamas leaders including Ismail Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar, and Mohammed Deif. While we don't know what the charges are yet, there is speculation that Israeli leaders will be charged with Israel's policy of weaponizing food to starve civilians, which is a war crime when used as a method of warfare, and Hamas for the hostage-taking of Israelis on October 7th. These charges are likely to be framed quite narrowly, as arrest warrants can only be issued where there is substantial evidence to back up these charges. The International Criminal Court has also in the past issued arrest warrants against leaders of states, most notably Umar al-Bashir, Sudan's deposed former president, and Vladimir Putin, the current president of Russia. Both of them were indicted for war crimes. Putin's charges were for the unlawful deportation of children during the war with Ukraine. Now, European countries supported the issuing of this indictment, as did the US, which is not a signatory to the International Criminal Court, and President Biden said that the arrest warrant against Putin was justified. Very importantly, the International Criminal Court relies on national jurisdictions to enforce arrest warrants, as it doesn't have a police force of its own to be able to arrest people. And it had requested in the past that wherever Bashir and Putin travel to those countries which have accepted the ICC's jurisdiction, they should be arrested in those countries. Famously, Bashir traveled to over 22 states and was not arrested by any of them. But European countries heavily criticized these states for not doing so, for not arresting either Bashir or Putin. Now, the argument in favor of not enforcing arrest warrants is that Russia is not a party to the International Criminal Court, and Putin, as the current head of state, has immunity from arrest in these national jurisdictions. Now, I also believe that Putin and Bashir had immunity, and I've been consistent on that position. And I also believe that Netanyahu has immunity, and coupled with the fact that the ICC jurisdiction has not been accepted by Israel, he should not be arrested. But it is interesting to see the West's reaction to this. Diplomats from the same countries which so heavily criticized African and Asian states for not arresting Putin or Bashir are now trying to urge officials from the ICC to not announce these charges against Israeli or Hamas officials, claiming that they could affect ceasefire talks. If we do see arrest warrants, the question we will all have is whether European states and America will enforce these arrest warrants and do what they have criticized other states, particularly those in the global south, for not doing when it came to al-Bashir and Putin, or whether we will further see a loss of legitimacy from the West as it rushes to protect its allies and only impose its standards for international law on other states.